Myron Kerstein, you did In the Heights with John Chu. So when did he bring you on board for Wicked?
He brought me on board about 3 years ago. I was finishing up Tick Tick Boom, and which is another musical. And yeah, it was when somebody tells you that you're going to do a film that is going to be really challenging. At first, you're like, "Yay!" And then you're like, "Yay!" Like this is going to be really, yeah, very challenging. And it was an 8 month shoot and 155 days between two movies, 250 hours of footage, and but at the same time, we were all John jokingly said to me, "We've been training for this all our lives," and so between the musical films I've worked in, just on indies and other musicals like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and then of course in the Heights and Tick Tick Boom, I really felt like I was in a good place to at least start on something this big, and then of course I had amazing team behind me.
hmm Yeah, I'm curious, like, because this is a two-part movie, does that affect your approach to the editing at all? Because, or is it still just, this is one movie and part two next year is a different movie, or are you trying to look for some through line in your editing between the two?
I mean, it was sort of like block shooting in television, where I was getting two different episodes, and so I had different projects to help the assistants organize the two movies. But I was, basically bouncing around two different complete different tones, and so that was challenging to know where I was going at any given moment. But of course, I had the musical from Broadway to help guide me a bit, but I had to kind of put that away because it's our own adaptation, and so I just tried my best to cut scenes the way I thought John was trying to tell them dramatically, and he gives me a lot of freedom in the edit to approach the footage any way I want. So I just tried to cut the scenes and try to keep up as much as I could, and then we put the second movie. We did finish an assembly for both movies from the get-go, so I've seen both movies, but we put the other one to sleep for a bit while we had only the bandwidth for the first one.
hmm what did you and John discuss about the first film, which is very much about Elphaba and Glinda's relationship, and we see it come to fruition. They go from enemies and roommates to BFFs, and then all this drama ensues. So, what did you guys discuss about pacing that relationship in the first movie?
Well, first of all, he told me that we are making The Wizard of Oz meets The Lord of the Rings, and then the greatest love story that's ever been told. And so I was balancing the fantasy elements of this epic, but at the end of the day, it is about this two relationship. And look, it's really challenging to have all these, to have a relationship develop so quickly, and then on by the end of the first movie, you're rooting for both of them, you're feeling heartbreak. Um, and so you have to balance, how long should they be enemies? When do they come together as friends? When they feel torn apart, do we actually feel that like that feels earned? The centerpiece of the movie was this scene called that takes place in the Ozdust Ballroom, and we always felt like if that scene didn't work, the rest of the movie basically fell apart. So we basically spent a lot of time really trying to milk every little moment in that scene and make sure and feel bold with the way we're telling that scene, because if we didn't feel the heartache and feeling Elphaba feel ostracized and bullied and made fun of, and we didn't feel how alone she was, yet she was trying to find some power, and then if we didn't feel that sort of moment when Glinda makes this gesture towards her, and they're bonding because of that, then the rest of the movie would just not work. And so, again, we John shot 10-minute takes of wonders of basically this scene from start to finish, where I would just have to figure out. And by the way, every take made me cry. the same way as the finished scene. And so it was really challenging because I didn't know where even to begin, because every take had a lot of resonance and felt emotional. So trying to construct something that intimate in the middle of this fantasy, and being really bold about silence and feeling really uncomfortable, uh, ultimately, I think hopefully the audience feels the same way about it.
Yeah, because it's a different kind of music and dance scene there, and you're editing more for like vulnerability, right?
Yeah, I love it. Chris Scott is an amazing choreographer. He worked with Cynthia Erivo to make this sort of strange deconstructed dance. And that coming back together as this sort of this gesture of bonding and is nothing I've ever seen before. And a lot of people at first are like, "Is this working?" Because it's so weird, you know. And but again, to be really bold and just trust in that the intimacy is working, is we just sort of swung for the fences, and hopefully it connects with the audience.
Yeah, I think it starts out you're like, oh, that's kind of weird, and then you get kind of sad because she's lonely by herself and being bullied, and then it becomes lovely when Glinda comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just trying to what I love about that scene is that it's part of a bigger dance number, which is dancing through life. And at the beginning of that scene, of course, it's Fiyero who's leading the rest of Shiz, and they're following his lead as far as like how to rebel, and his dance moves are sort of mirrored throughout the background dancers. And then at the end of it, it's actually Elphaba and Glinda that the Shiz and the rest of the people in the Ozdust are following. And so I just love how that bookends to make this sort of powerful moment of acceptance.
Yeah, for sure. That Wicked fans have been waiting for a movie for 21 years. Like, do you like feel that pressure, like to satisfy fans? A lot of them who've had, something pictured in their minds of what a film would look like, especially for, like Defying Gravity, the signature song, and that, closes the first film. Like, do you feel that pressure, or do you try to like keep that out of your mind when you're editing something like this?
I mean, in the beginning, it's terrifying because something that is so beloved by so many people. There's millions of fans of this material. But like a lot of similar to how we worked with Crazy Rich Asians or In the Heights and even Tick Tick Boom to some extent, you do have to sort of put it all away at some point and just say, I'm going to make what I'm going to make, and approach the footage like any other scene. And then, when you're working on something like Defying Gravity, which is arguably the most famous musical number of all time, of the history of Broadway, you have to sort of, again, put it away and say, okay, I'm going to try to make this as powerful as I think it's supposed to be. But, if I'm starting to feel something and I'm feeling the power of it, then hopefully the audience will too. And so, um, I think we pulled that off. But yeah, it's really like it's a balance between like what do the fans want, and like we just have to make what we're going to make. And there's shots in Defying Gravity that took a year to make with VFX, and we kept judging the cut the entire time. Um, uh, Jon does not have any rules as far as constructing a musical number. He likes to break songs. We start and stop songs all the time. There's no rules as far as like I use a click track as well, but also we throw it all away. Like we just break every rule there is in order to tell the story and to feel the emotion. Like right before the big war cry, we literally stop the song again for maybe the sixth time, and build up suspense because we know it's coming. And her jumping out of the building, we think that there's a famous moment where in the song, the original Broadway song, she sings "It's Me," and that's supposed to be the big build up on Broadway. And instead, we break through the window and she starts free falling. And so we were really playing with suspense and storytelling and building up these moments in different ways. And hopefully, not tricking the audience, but just sort of, keeping them suspended and keeping that drama sort of as tight as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely work. You add your own flavor there, and you need to for film, right? So it's not exactly the same as the stage play. So, well, Myron, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time, and you get to stay on because everyone is coming back.